CX podcast at our YouTube channel, deltacx.tv. Also live on LinkedIn Live. Hopefully, you're getting notified right now. And this one is a very special one that we moved 2 weeks earlier because the iron is hot. We've got to all talk about remote work and not just remote work in general, which is an important topic, but also how can Agile be remote? Because some people believe that it's not really agile if you don't have everyone within coronavirus distance of each other. So, we have a fantastic guest today who I've been lucky enough to meet in person and speak at her conference in November. Check her out at remoteforever.com. Molood, introduce yourself while I open up all the chat windows so people can ask questions and make comments live.
First of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. Hello, everybody. My name is Molood, as Debbie just said. I am the founder of Remote Forever and also the founder of Remote Forever Summit, which is the first and by far the biggest online event within the world of Agile that focuses specifically on bringing remote work to the Agile world. Need I say more?
You can say more if you want. So everybody can get to know you at Remote Forever. They can, of course, find you on LinkedIn and anywhere. Are you a big tweeter? Where else can people find you?
Yeah, I am a big tweeter. I'm tweeting in 4 languages right now about the
Okay.
coronavirus. Kind of weird. But normally I only tweet about remote work in Agile. I'm also on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And yeah, you can just follow me anywhere you want and
Are you
you
remote
get
forever
updates about me.
everywhere?
Yes, I'm remote
Okay.
forever everywhere. Except
Find
for
her everywhere.
LinkedIn, where Remote Forever is my company site, and I'm also Molood, you know?
Okay, got it. So everybody needs to find you in all the places. So I'm going to start with a little story about once upon a time, I worked somewhere that thought it was agile. And they thought that you could only do agile with everybody sitting in the same room. And yet they hired a programmer in Brazil. And when I wanted to start working from home, they acted like, oh, no, 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 this isn't agile. And it sounds like some of the, am I allowed to say agile snobs, believe in some sort of agile purity that means that if we try to do anything creative or interesting or evolving with the times, it's not agile. What do you say to those people?
Well, I empathize with you, Debbie. I started as a software developer and I was in a company that wasn't agile, that was about to be transformed into agile. So they were doing it department by department, and my department was one of the very last ones. And of course, what you call agile snobs, I call agile priests, because I think what they do is they go around and they want to bring everybody into the church of agile and they want to turn everyone into a believer. But I think fundamentally the idea of agile is to make the business adaptable to the changing world around it, whether it's the market or the needs of the product or anything else. So, yes, I am totally with you. And that is one of the main reasons why I even started the idea of Remote Forever. That I had never been in a team as a developer, tester, scrum master, agile coach that where the team was co-located. I actually had to struggle hard. I contacted brokers and asked them to please find me an assignment where the whole team is co-located because I wanted to have that experience. And all these years, I never had it. So, yes, I thought this is the reality, and people are clearly denying it. They're in a state of denial. And when I put the idea out there, I was very, very afraid. You know this because I've shared this with you before. I was super afraid because I thought, all the thought leaders of Agile, all the manifesto authors and their followers, they believe that co-location is the only way we can have effective communication.
Well,
But
Agile Manifesto was from what, 2000, 2002?
Agile Manifesto was coined in 2001,
Okay.
but the Agile practices, they were shaped and formed in the 80s and 90s. So these
So
people
everyone was
came
coding
together.
Fortran.
A lot of people were actually. I was a baby, but yes, a lot of people were coding Fortran. The thing is, when they came together and coined the term Agile, most of the Agile Manifesto authors, they worked in very small companies, and they saw that this was one of the fundamental principles that was making them successful, but there were also 11 others. Somehow, 17 years later, people were still focused on whether or not they're collocated, and they said, if you're not collocated, you're not doing Agile, it's impossible.
But you're proving every day that it is not just possible, but you can still have productivity, efficiency, velocity, quality, fewer defects, that all of the things that we're shooting for, these can definitely happen. Well, what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions for some of the purists who think we have to be co-located?
Okay. Give me a second because I hear your voice a little problematic. I don't know if it's
Oh,
my earphones or if it's the internet. Can you just say that last bit again?
yeah, no problem. It looks like my internet's a little bit funky. Can you hear me better now?
No,
Not better
you almost
now.
sound like a robot.
That sounds bad. Hold on a
Yeah.
moment.
Okay. I don't know if it's the same experience for the audience watching it.
Good question. Let's ask them. People who are watching in LinkedIn,
Can't hear anything anymore.
now you don't hear anything anymore. Okay, hold on. Can you hear me now?
You're on mute. No voice coming.
No, I'm not
And
muted. People watching live, can you hear me? Okay, you hear everything. Okay, my boyfriend's watching live and he says he hears me. And someone wrote into YouTube and said the sound is
I see
okay.
your lips move, but I can't hear a single sound from you.
Okay.
This is ironic.
Yeah, really.
It might be me. Okay, let me test something then.
Yeah, sorry everybody. This is the magic of going completely live and not editing it later. But while Molood is checking into her system, if you have any questions or comments about Agile and working remotely, this is your expert here. And also, I've been working remotely for most of the last 25 years, so I have my own opinions. Thank you to Jeffrey, Felipe, and Stephanie for saying that you were able to hear me. So let's see if we can get the sound back soon.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. I think there was a problem with my Bluetooth driver. I don't know what, but I just had to restart it and it worked.
And, that's just a reminder to everybody that if you're doing remote work and your Zoom goes crazy for a moment, it'll be fixed within a couple of minutes. We don't have to panic. We don't have to cry. We don't have to declare that remote work doesn't work. Because I've seen people do
No.
stuff like this. They go, oh, well, I couldn't hear you on Zoom. Okay, look, everybody has a bad day. I used to have very slow internet. They just upgraded it a month or two ago. So I thank the internet gods or whoever's the
That's
patron saint,
good.
the patron
I
saint
think
of internet.
one of the things I do is I always have a backup plan. So for audio, I have 3 plans. So the first one is, my AirPods that you can see, and it's Bluetooth, and it allows me to move freely. And I also have 2 cabled sets of how to say that, like earphones
Yeah.
on my desk in case something goes wrong, so I can switch very quickly.
I have to say that for me, my plan Bs are if this thing for some reason stops working or it stops recognizing it, I pull it and I will just shout into my laptop. And they're shouting out of my laptop and we just live with it. Or worst
Yeah,
case scenario, since Zoom does have dial in numbers, I'll say, hold on, everybody, let me dial in from my phone. And, if you can see my video,
good
keep the
point.
video running. So,
Yeah, now you reminded me that I have another 3 extra microphones. Oh my goodness.
yeah, I have my recording studio in the other room, which some people have seen in some of my other podcasts. This is my desk. But yeah, hypothetically, I can go into my recording booth and there I've got another microphone. So, and good to have
Okay.
plan B. Plan B, people.
Yes.
Totally unscripted. We love it. Anyway, we already have a question from in the chat room because we've got people watching in LinkedIn and YouTube today. Thanks to the people who are joining in live and
Do
for
you want to
leaving.
ask me the question you were about to ask me
I
when I
don't even
lost you?
remember it now. That is the
Okay,
funny part.
great. Go with the flow.
What
Go
was
with the
I
flow.
saying? I don't know. If it's really important, it'll come back to me. I do tend to have a good memory, but right now I'm just like, ah, live show craziness.
Relax. It's
Yeah,
fine.
dry and cool. So Stephanie says, I was wondering about remote user research and workshops. If you have any good advice on how to do those remotely, or is it even a good idea to do those remotely? Okay, that's a little bit of a UX question, but let me start with you. When you have some sort of team workshop or team exercise, what are some of your preferred methods and tools to do that remotely?
Wow, that's a very broad question because it really depends on the context.
Okay.
So if I'm teaching principles of Agile or basic fundamental practices of Scrum, I would use a different set of tools than if I have to teach people how to do big room planning over, remotely, like completely virtually. Some of the tools that I really like to use are Zoom for video conferencing parts and some sort of shared canvas that is a digital canvas. Sometimes it's Mural, sometimes it's Miro. So the first one was Mural, and the second one was Miro. Two competitors that have completely similarly pronounced names.
I know.
Sometimes I even go super simple. I use tools like Trello or some chat prompts. So it really depends on the context. And I think for the UX question, you're the expert, Debbie. So you might want to take that.
Yeah, I'll take that side of it. So I agree with Molood. I tend to use Zoom a lot. I mean, they've got their name right here on the screen. I do use Zoom a lot right now. I am using Mural for some stuff. I am not a big UX workshop person in that sense. I'll talk about research in a moment, but I like to do ideation workshops. I don't believe in design sprints and things where people are sketching or doing my job. But for ideation workshops, I mostly do those in Mural, where I've kind of prepared my own canvas for my own style of ideation workshop, my Delta CX ideation workshop. So I do that in Mural. We also do, if you join in once a month here on the channel, once a month we do live improv comedy, and we're just silly and stupid, and that's done in Mural, allowing everyone to be anonymous. As for remote user research, when I've done remote user research, I have mostly done interviews with Zoom. I haven't yet tried to do user research where I was trying to do something more observational. Obviously, observational user research is incredibly important, but is probably going to change a little bit this year, given that we're all trying to stay away from each other. It's going to be a
You
little
did
bit.
try something at the Remote Forever Summit this past November.
Which thing? The thing that I
You,
did?
yeah.
Yeah, at the Remote Forever Summit, I did my 1 hour Dev and UX program where I talk about what's UX and how does it fit into Agile and Lean. And I have people do a couple of exercises, and I also use a polling system. And the polling
Mhm.
system is mentimeter.com. And again, none of this is sponsored. I pay these people; they don't pay me, sadly. This is
That
not.
should change.
What can I do? This is not sponsored. I use Mentimeter, sometimes angrily, sometimes happily. So I've had ups and downs with them, to be honest. And then Malood also saw me use an optimal workshop tree test. So some of my user research is done through tools like Optimal Workshop, where I'll do card sorting and tree testing. I'm also currently a paid user. So again, they're not paying me. A paid user of Validately for some of my UX testing because I'm a big Acture prototyper. And so when I take that to testing, currently we've been using Validately. Those are some of my preferred tools. I don't yet have any ideas of how we're going to do observational research remotely. I think we're just going to have to still send humans to humans, but hopefully there's going to be some sort of safe and healthy way to do that. So I'm not totally sure, but thanks to Stephanie for the question. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions to that or comments. And of course, people in LinkedIn and YouTube, let me know if you guys have any other questions. I will refresh LinkedIn because LinkedIn is many minutes behind YouTube. So best for you guys to join YouTube. Please subscribe at deltacx.tv. It's just better than LinkedIn. Sorry, LinkedIn. Okay, back to Molood. So we were talking about Agile and how people, we were talking, the original question, I think, before we got sidetracked was, what are some of the main misconceptions that Agile coaches or Agile leaders might have that lead them to believe that the work can't be done remotely?
Well, my mind went immediately into root cause analysis.
Right,
So I
good.
think the reason why there are misconceptions is because many trainings in Agile are focusing on in-person collaboration and in-person exchange of ideas. Everything is like all the exercises, all the activities that are taught to people in Agile are using Post-its and pens or some sort of collaborative wall. And somehow, when people take it online, they want to replicate the exact same thing and it fails and it becomes very frustrating. So I think the first misconception that many people have is that when they go remote, they have to replicate the office. And I think that's absolutely wrong. When you're remote, the dynamics are completely different and you should not aim for replicating the office. There is a reason why the majority of remote workers are reporting that they are more productive. It is because they're away from the distractions of the office. So by replicating everything that you do in a collocated place, you're bringing all the distractions and all the elements that cause people to want to move away from the office back. And then remote work becomes the enemy, and people say it's a challenge. So that brings me to the second misconception. Now, people think remote work is a challenge. They come to me and they say, so what are the top challenges of remote working in Agile? You say, duh, you just answered your own question. Remote work is not a challenge. It is the reality
Your
of our
crappy
work.
mindset.
Well, I wouldn't put it that
Not
way
you. I
just
meant like the
yet.
person talking. Yeah.
But I think that is the problem, that people put remote work as an afterthought when they are working in an Agile environment. Whatever the role is, you can be a Scrum Master, Agile Coach, UX, tester, anything. People design meetings, people design the collaborative work, the way that code gets reviewed, the way that design gets through the flow of the system, and everything else. They base all these processes on person to person co-located setup, and then they say, oh right, how are we going to include that remote person? Let's set up a video conferencing and have them watch us as we collaborate and as we brainstorm. And
Sounds
that
great.
creates, yeah, but that is the reality, right? People put it as an afterthought. So they want to bring that person in at the very end when everything else is designed and they haven't been included. So that person, that remote person feels excluded. Everybody in the room, probably, if they have a little level of empathy, they would feel bad that they can't include the other person. Whereas, if you had put some thought into the idea that what if we could design the workshop, we could design the work for anyone to be able to work from anywhere. How would things change? How would the user experience, and the user would be the workers here, how would that change for the people? And then bring co-location as the afterthought. Say, okay, so now that it is possible to collaborate, if everybody is sitting at their own desks in their own home or whatever, what if two people are going to be in the same room? How are we going to adapt to that scenario? So yeah, that was the second one. Remote work is usually an afterthought, and I think that should completely reverse in our mindset if we want to create equal opportunities for people. And I like to finish with the third one. That is what I just mentioned, equality. It is important that every single person who is collaborating in a distributed setup has an equal opportunity to to contribute to the work that is going on, whether it's a meeting or just regular work. So if you're making a decision and three people are in the same room and they make a decision, and the way they want to include their remote members is to write an email or a chat message and inform them of the decision, that is not inclusion, because that decision impacts those people and they should have been involved in the decision making process. So if you are designing, say, a video conferencing, use a tool that gives everybody an equal opportunity to participate. If you're designing the work or designing the work process to make decisions, make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to contribute. So yeah,
Yeah,
I would say
that brings
include
us back
and
to diversity and inclusion and accessibility. That I'm connected with some accessibility advocates and champions on LinkedIn, and they're often saying like, "Gee, when we all ask to work from home or to be able to work remotely because we're in wheelchairs or we have certain diseases or we have certain needs, we were all told." We can't do that for you, or oh, if we do it for you, we have to do for everybody, or oh, that's going to be too expensive. And they got treated pretty badly. Let's just say that without saying
yeah,
swear words yet. And of course now everyone's like, oh, work from home, work from home. And so the accessibility community is like, okay, better late than never. But hey, remember when we needed this and you basically told us to go jump in a lake? So I think it can be a part of the diversity and inclusion effort.
definitely. That is actually one of the top comments that I have received from many people around the world who attended the Remote Forever Summit. And they said, finally, a conference I can go to because it's all happening online.
Yeah, and another thing that I wrote about in my book when I talked about diversity and inclusion is that in addition to accessibility or disabled people, let's think about the diversity and inclusion of locations. Because I
Definitely.
think about where I'm located, and I'm located in lovely countryside Italy. And I know that if any of the young people here today want to work in technology, they're probably going to have to either go away to school or do an online school, and then they're going to have to go work. Where are the jobs? If we don't start having more remote work, these people are going to have to leave their homes, their families, and their communities and bleed money because they're going to have to go live in Vienna, Stockholm, Oslo, London, and maybe they wanted to be here. I mean, I'm for people branching out and trying things and moving away from home, but maybe they also want to be here, or at some point they want to come back. And it's about finding the best person for the job wherever they are.
Yeah, and finding the best job wherever the job is.
Yeah.
Besides, it's not even cheaper to have people in an office. There are so many different companies that decided to go remote or to experiment going remote for maybe part of the company, and they've reported that they actually saved a lot of money because they cut down on real estate, and real estate is not cheap in big cities.
Oh, no, definitely not. I used to work at the Macy's.com office that they're just now closing in San Francisco and laying off 800 people. And we
Wow.
used to have what we would call office Ebola. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but that's where somebody in the office gets sick. And because the
Oh
office
yeah,
ventilation is so bad, we used to have colds and flus go around nonstop from September to April. You would get sick 3 times. And my thought
I
was
know.
I would just say, you know what, I'm going to stay home a week and I'm going to see if the place airs out or something, because I am so tired of being sick. So even before coronavirus, we still had crappy offices where we all made each other sick.
Yeah, that is true. Well, I live in Stockholm, Sweden, and sometimes I've had to work from offices, and I've experienced the same thing, where sometimes in Sweden, people are very, like, it's very liberal in many offices, and people bring their dogs sometimes they bring their kids, and kids are often sick in this time of the year. And I always like thought, what kind of parent is that bringing their sick kid to the office? But no
That's
one
all they
seemed
can
to
do.
care.
Yeah, and then
No,
the
no
kid's
one
like,
seems to care.
uh, uh.
Okay, don't get this more disgusting than this. Let's move on.
Okay, that's pretty disgusting. Sorry. So I remember one time I asked to work from home at a job, and my manager was like, well, I know you could do it from home. I trust your ability and you've done this before and blah, blah, blah. But if you worked from home, it wouldn't be fair to the other people who have to come into the office. And I said, if coming into the office is unfair, why are we making everyone do it?
Good answer. Good answer.
Do you ever hear anything like that from people where, like, we don't want people to work remotely? That's not fair in some way.
Yeah, definitely. Like the same comment you just mentioned, I've heard it many times too. But more importantly, I think it is from a place of fear because I work with a lot of executives and top managers, and sometimes management is afraid, like, as a person, as an individual, they're afraid because they have a fear of losing control, when in reality, they actually don't have control because people are free and they can do whatever they basically want. If somebody wants to pretend that they're working and they're in an office, the manager would think they are working. And
Right.
they can do it the exact same thing at home. But the comment that I get most is, how do I know they are working if they are at home and I can't see them? And my answer to that is, how do you know they are working when they're sitting in the office? Because what you see is their presence, it is not the actual work. But it's very easy to remedy that. When you go remote, when you have remote workers, you can set up different agreements between the people that work together to have updates about the accomplishments of the day. And that's actually very good for the culture because it puts the focus on the outcome instead of on the busy time, on the time where people have been present or busy doing useless stuff. You have to make progress towards the goal. Isn't that the essence of what Agile software development came to fix? To make sure that we deliver value to the customer at the very end?
Hey, yes, imagine that. I mean, I think some agile coaches appear to have forgotten about value and they just think faster, faster, faster. How do we get people to move faster? Hey, throw the UX people off the team and have some people just read a UX book and then they can sketch screens and so I feel like we've sacrificed a lot of quality and value by kind of focusing on maybe some of the worst of agile or some of the worst of what people think agile is, which is, whoa, we should be really fast, get stuff out to the customer, and if it's broken and terrible, I will fix it later. Hey, agile expert, how often does it get fixed later?
Uh, Let me tell you a story to answer that.
Right.
I worked with a team where the product owner did not want to remove anything from the backlog. So stuff kept getting added to the backlog. It was a team that was internal, and the customers were internal developers. So they were creating a tool used by other developers. So customers were basically, feet aside from the team, so they could just come physically there and talk to this team. But they were in 3 different offices, so that's a different part of the story. And we had customers in all those 3 locations. This product owner didn't want to say no to so many colleagues per se, so he kept moving things up and down in the backlog, and then the backlog was growing in size so much. So he ended up creating a section at the bottom of the backlog that was called future. And
Was that his
slowly,
icebox?
pretty much. So
Okay.
slowly, developers just started making fun of it internally, and they were like, "Yeah, the future box," meaning the never gonna happen box. And then there was another part created that was called near future. I
Oh,
hope that
great.
some of the developers I worked with are watching this because this is memory for all of us. So near future became yet another level of that until one day I sat with the product owner and I said, "Dude, seriously, is this ever going to happen?" And he was like, "Yeah, probably, like after this and that and that." And after coaching him a little bit, it turned out that for the next 5 years, none of the things in near future or future was going to happen. So we just killed off all those tickets in the backlog and we called it a day. And we thought, if it's important enough, it will come back again.
Yeah, sounds like we need a little grooming and prioritization there.
That was the way it was done. It's just, I think this is another part of Agile that people forget. That's the principle of simplicity. So in the Agile Manifesto principles, simplicity is defined as the art of maximizing the amount of work not done.
Not done. I have this one
That's the
memorized. It's my
definition.
favorite.
Yeah, it is one of my favorites too. And I think people forget about that. Like, you need to be deliberate and choose what is not going to get done and just move it out. That's how you get fast, but not move out UX people and test people and all of that. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, we'll have to have a separate podcast on UX fitting into Agile. I'm going to focus on remote work today and try not to get too crazy with that one. But yes, simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done, is essential. And that is my favorite because I know that UX is always fighting for quality and value. And we would love to say, you know what, we shouldn't do that work or we shouldn't do that now. And hypothetically, engineers should be cheering us on because we're hopefully making things better for them. But I also think we have to stop pretending it gets fixed later. Because if we really care about defects, if we really care about agile or lean, then we can't keep shipping defective stuff and pretending we'll fix it later.
Yeah, there is a really cool flow chart that an old colleague and friend of mine has created. It basically says, look at the bug in the backlog. Is it going to be fixed ever? If the answer is yes, fix it now. If the answer is no, or maybe, move it out.
Hey, imagine that. That's a great flowchart. That's pretty easy to
It is.
follow. Just a reminder to everybody that we're about halfway through. If you have any comments or questions, we are live both on YouTube and LinkedIn. LinkedIn, you are probably a good 4 minutes behind where YouTube is. I don't know why the stream lags, but we've got people watching in both. So if you want to join us in YouTube, it's deltacx.tv. Please subscribe. And we have a couple of comments of people going, sick kids, and the ideas box. So but we don't have any other questions right now. So one thing that I heard when I told people that I wanted to work remotely at another job, they were like, UX remote, but you guys like to whiteboard. And that meant I should come into the office so that I could whiteboard. And I tried to explain that there are things like mural, and there were even like GoToMeeting or something used to have like a fake scribbly tool. I mean, these things have been around for years, but someone thought
Yeah.
like, no, UX has to come into the office because you guys like to whiteboard. And I thought that was a terrible excuse. Have you heard any other terrible excuses that you've had to talk people out of?
About UX? Yes.
No, please don't get me started. I'll have a heart attack. No, I mean more about the remote work. I was told I couldn't work remotely because I probably want to come in and whiteboard. Are there any other things you hear over and over that you think are kind of
Yeah, for
bad
sure.
reasons?
Yeah, so UX people are whiteboard people, therefore they can't work from home. That's one that you just mentioned. The other is our team is very used to doing pair programming. How are we going to do pair programming if we're not in the same place? Or I've heard actually the only team ever that was completely co-located that I worked with, which I found after very, very hard way of looking for them and finally found them. They were mob programming, and mob programming is basically sitting around the sofa with a big TV and only one keyboard and computer, and you take turns and there's a timer. So if you don't know that, it's a really cool concept, and you can do design mob or anything else mobbing, which is kind of cool. But this team was mob programming, and they said the same thing. How are we going to do mob programming, which is our way of developing code, if we're doing working from home? Another one is interesting, and it's the exact opposite. It is when it comes to the work of the product owner in the agile setup. There has been many cases where I saw the product owner was completely separate from the team in a completely different country, sometimes in a completely different time zone where it's very hard to schedule like real-time conversations with, and that seemed to be okay. But if a product owner in the same time zone in the same location wanted to work remotely, it was somehow unimaginable. And yeah,
I had
that's
that at a
another
job
one that I
too.
hear.
I had that at a job too.
Yeah,
It's like the programmers in Brazil, the product owners in Ohio, the whole team's in San Francisco. But if Debbie wants to work from home, she is a bad dog.
yeah, yeah, that's something else. There is another one that I hear a lot, which is people seem to confuse remote working or distributed teams with offshoring. And
Oh,
that
okay.
really bothers me because there are many European and American companies that are outsourcing their projects, their IT projects, sometimes their entire IT development to low cost countries like China, India, the Philippines, and all that. And they assume that is remote work. Whereas what is happening there is a supplier buyer kind of relationship. It's not necessarily a collaborative effort, and many companies fail to make it a collaborative effort, and after they lose a lot of money and the quality is not good, and like all the problems that I'm sure a lot of you have faced in your work, they bring some development home. So they have now some engineers at home and some engineers offshore, and they still forget to mention the fact that now that the dynamic has changed, now that we need collaboration for these devs and these UX people and those testers to be able to work together, we need to talk about it. We need to create different work agreements, work situations, work environments, even infrastructure, and give access to tools to different kinds of people. So the relation that was supplier buyer is still there, and that creates a lot of frustration for people. And I think people, like many managers in big companies or medium-sized companies, they think remote is just this thing that you swing. Like, like now with the situation of the pandemic in the world, people have to work from home, and many managers are like, sure, we're going to do that. So they forget the complications of it, the impact of it. There are many different things that need to change in the operations, in the legal system, in the payroll, in infrastructure, in security. You're basically allowing people to work from any device on any network in different parts of the world. So of course you need to invest in your security and make sure that your infrastructure works before you can do that. It's not just that thing that you switch a button and it works. So I hope that more people start to think about the fact that remote working, in Agile or not, it needs to be deliberate and it needs to be taken seriously. And if you have not done this, or if you have always done it done half measures for it, you need to bring experts to help you do this.
So there's a couple of people in my LinkedIn feed who seem to be associated with some tools that try to that are aimed at remote workers or people working from home, and they try to fake that there are rooms you're going into. Like there's some sort of interface you see where it's like, now I'm in this meeting room. Ooh, there's other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's a video thing. And ooh, now I'm in this room. I'm on a couch. I haven't messed with those yet, but I've seen a couple of screenshots of them. Have you tried those? And what's the
Yeah.
pros and the cons?
Yeah, I have tried practically every one of them.
I thought you might have.
Yeah, I do the experiment with different tools that come to the market. So for the summit, I am surprised that you haven't seen it. So we use one of those tools called Remo, and we
You
use it
did, and
for
I didn't
our.
go into it.
That's okay. You can test it later.
I
So
was
we use
traveling at
that
the
tool
time. Sorry,
for.
everybody.
Yeah, that's true. You were in the US. The time zone was pretty early for you at the time. So anyway, what we did was networking events there. So basically the tool is like a floor plan, like a floor map of an office or a conference space or whatever, and there's squares that show that are supposedly different rooms, and you drag your avatar to different rooms, and as soon as you are in a room where there are other people, like other avatars of other people, you see the videos of those people pop up on your screen, and you can have real-time conversations with them. And as soon as you drag your avatar away, then you're not there anymore, you're in a different room. So that's the kind of environment that these tools are trying to create. One thing that I dislike about them is that they are replicating the office.
Right.
Some of these tools have implemented features like knocking at a door, which is kind of okay, I guess, for some people. I really do not like people to, make a sound in my ear when I'm trying to be productive and I'm supposedly not to be distracted. The thing is, these tools can be useful in some situations. Like, if you want to have an open space session where people create an agenda together and you break out into different rooms and you want to have discussions in smaller groups, they are really, really great tools. But one downside of them is that many of the tools, unfortunately, are in their early stages and they demand a lot of bandwidth. So if you're working with countries that have a lower internet bandwidth, it might not be very good to choose this kind of tools. But a tool like Zoom that has been tested and proven, even though it's not as it doesn't have such a pretty UI. From an experience perspective, it's a lot smoother and things work so much better right now. I hope that those tools become better. I probably would not like to be in an office that uses that tool as a default, because that is just like having to go to an office every day. Now it's just, a floor plan of an office, and I have to make sure that I'm there. And if I go to a meeting, I have to make sure I update my avatar and move my avatar to a meeting. So it's like double the work. I am not a big fan of that for work, but for networking and conferencing, I really did enjoy the experience so far.
Okay, good to know. So people can check those out and see in which situations they might work for them or might not. Thank you. I'm
Mhm.
glad you knew about that. Oh, I thought you would. So again, we're still live. If anybody has any questions or comments, put it in the YouTube or the LinkedIn chat room. LinkedIn, you are many minutes behind where we are. YouTube, you're usually about 30 seconds behind where we are. So if there's anything you guys want to ask or add about remote working, remote UX from me, remote Agile from Molood, remote anything in general, let us know. I'm monitoring the chat rooms for more questions. Any
You can also ask about facilitation. I'm also pretty good at that, so I can maybe
Yeah, I
give
was
you
just
some
gonna
tips.
say, throw me a topic because I'm out of questions right now.
Sure, I think facilitation is not a bad one. I once was working with a brilliant UX designer who was undermined by the company. Surprise!
That's
And
our story.
was
The
asked to
lean
work
sin of
from the
underutilized
office.
talent.
Yes, indeed. And luckily, when I was there, there came a lot of questions for facilitating different kinds of workshops, including design workshops, where as an Agile coach, I know how to facilitate. And as an expert in remote work and online facilitation, that's another expertise of mine. So I know how to do online facilitation, which is something that many Agile coaches have no idea how to do. But when it comes to design, it was like at the time I had never even been to a design meeting myself. So I asked this UX designer to help me, and it turned out that she was a brilliant facilitator herself. So she did not have the online part, so I had to help her. But on the design part, she was a really good facilitator. When I asked her if she had taken some facilitation course, her answer was no. So she was kind of a natural. But one of the things that I like people to know is that facilitating meetings, workshops, conferences, things like that are skills that are learnable and that are teachable. And I see too many people that go to meetings that are run or driven. A person owns the meeting and they call the meeting and they drive the meeting. And I think when you have a facilitator, you get a lot more value, a lot more collaboration, a lot more contribution from every single individual that is in the room. So maybe I ask a question from the people watching this. Can you tell me if you have ever been to a facilitated meeting? And if so, what was it that made that meeting different? And don't say facilitation, give me specifics.
And while people are answering that, and everybody, you better answer that, we do have a question. And Stephanie wrote, regarding facilitation and meetings, any tips to avoid the everyone is talking at the same time mess you sometimes have even in physical meetings that might get worse when we're all on microphones and headsets?
Great question. I love that question. I'm going to introduce you to a simple framework. It's going to take maybe 3 minutes for me to describe it. Is that okay, Debbie?
Yeah, we have
Okay,
15 minutes.
great. So, Stephanie, this is the framework that sets the purpose and the framework of the meeting before you even start the meeting. So, if you don't have a facilitator for the meeting, the most important thing is to get one. Either you need to step up and become a facilitator or bring a facilitator. Now, this framework that I want to tell you is a way to think about the meeting before the meeting even starts. It's called the POWER framework. It's an acronym. So I'm going to tell you what every letter stands for.
I'll
P
make an
stands for
ugly sign.
purpose.
Go ahead.
Okay, make an
Purpose.
ugly sign.
I'm going to write it down. Purpose. Okay, go ahead.
P stands for purpose, and that is think about what is the purpose of the meeting. Why are we calling these people into this room, into this whether physical or virtual room? O stands for outcome. Think about what is the tangible outcome that is going to be taken out of the meeting. Is it going to be a prioritized backlog? Is it going to be a draft of a design? What is it that is, the artifact that you're going to take away from the meeting? And be super clear about that. It could be many things. You can't say alignment. That's not really an outcome. And many people say that, synchronicity, alignment, that's not an outcome. It needs to be an artifact. And if you don't have that, that means your meeting is not well defined and you need to research some more and define it some more. Now we get to W. W is standing for what's in it for me. And that's the hardest part of this framework. You need to think about every single individual that is being invited to the meeting and put yourself in their shoes and think, what's in it for me? So if you're inviting an architect, a software architect, a manager, a marketing manager, or different kinds of talents, think about why does that particular role need to be in the meeting, and answer the question. If it's not valuable for them, they don't have to be there, and they're going to find the meeting boring and frustrating, and they're going to annoy the shit out of you. So what's in it for me is super important and super hard. Now we get to E. E stands for engagement. This is the part that relates to your question the most. That is, how can people engage in the conversation, in the different activities that are going to happen? I'm sure that if you have facilitated a meeting, you probably have designed it beforehand. So you think about, first 10 minutes we do this and we do this little exercise, then we have this other thing and we do this other exercise. So you plan it beforehand. But it's important to think about, how are people going to contribute? Are they allowed to talk at the same time? Or do they have to wait until the end and then raise hands before that? So think about that and be super clear in the very beginning of the meeting and tell people how you expect them to get engaged. So I'm going to take another example. So if you were, say, speaking at a conference, you have two different ways to engage your audience. The first one is, hey guys, this is me talking to you about this topic. Here is how you can engage with me. Interrupt me at any point and ask any questions you might have during my talk. A second approach is, this is me, I'm talking to you about this. Here is how you can engage with me. Please do not interrupt me during the seminar. I'll take the questions at the very end. And that sets very clear expectations about how people are allowed to engage. So to avoid talking at the same time, you can set that expectations right away from the beginning. I give you one tip. If you are in the same room and not remote, one of the things that I have seen work is to have people look at your hand. If you raise your hand up, that means the other person needs to raise their hand up and shut their mouth. And if somebody sees another person lift their arm up and stop talking, they need to do the same thing. And this cascades through the room in the physical space. Now, in the virtual space, one of the things you can do is that you are an admin. Choose a tool where you're allowed to make everyone mute at the same time, and make that super clear at the beginning and say, if I mute everyone, that means we need to listen to me as a facilitator because I have something to say. Some tools allow you to broadcast a written message to the entire audience. That's another way you can engage them. But the bottom line is, make sure that it's super clear how people are allowed to engage in the meeting. Now, the last letter in the POWER framework is R, and that stands for roles and responsibilities. There are two aspects to this one. The first is, is to make sure that everyone who is present in the meeting, in the session, knows what roles are present in the session. So if you have, marketing manager, architect, developer, blah, 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 say those names and make sure that everyone is aware of what roles are present. The second aspect of this is about you, the facilitator. What is your role in this meeting at any point in time? In the beginning, you can say, hi, I'm Stephanie, I'm here, and I'm only going to be facilitating. That means I will take a neutral part and neutral role, and I will not bring my own opinions into the meeting. Or you can say, hi, I'm Stephanie, I'm facilitating this, but I'm also a UX expert. So from time to time, I might actually throw in my expert opinions in to help proceed with the conversation. It is best if the facilitator is completely neutral, but often it's impossible. But clarifying that at the very beginning is super important. Now, how to use this power framework? It takes a lot of thinking. Think about it and then summarize it in 2 or 3 sentences that you say in the very beginning of the meeting. When you say the power frame, the result of the power thinking to the group that is present in the room, it shouldn't take more than 60 seconds. So that's a hint for you. The purpose of the meeting is this, the artifact we're going to take away is this. Here is what's in it for you guys, different roles, different ideas, and that covers our part 2, and here's how you can engage. Done. Shall we start?
Excellent. And we got another question from the LinkedIn chat from Ellen. Ellen appears to be a UX designer and researcher. And her question to you is, what are your thoughts about companies changing their mind about remote work after being forced to do it now?
Oh, they are happening. I mean, this is happening. You have no idea. I get so many requests these days just because they are forced to. And ironically, as I was working with a client for several months, trying to get them to switch to remote working, they were super resistant to it. And now everybody has to do it. So I think what will happen at the end is that just like the governments are realizing how unprepared they are for a pandemic, companies are going to realize how unprepared they are for a pandemic, aka being forced to work remotely. I think that this is the beginning of a big change that companies might. If it takes a little longer, though, I think if it's gone in 2 weeks, probably nothing happens. But if it does continue for a couple of months, I think many companies will realize that it was wrong not to invest in making remote actually possible for their employees.
Yeah, and Stephanie's put an emoji with a celebrating smiley face and said, thanks a lot for this framework. So thanks for sharing that with the audience.
You're welcome.
What do you think are some ways? So right now, of course, people are looking at remote work and they're trying to judge. It might be new to them. They're trying to judge, is this working? Could this work for us? Or where are we getting this wrong and how could it be better? Are there some things that people can measure or watch for that can tell them where this is successful and where they need some help?
Wow, big question again. There are many studies that have been done about what is possible to measure in the state of remote work. Actually, there is a report that gets published that's called the State of Remote Work. It's published every year, so just look for it and you'll find it. There are many great things you can measure. But if I want to give my own opinion, is coming back to Agile. That is, measure the result. How much value are you creating? If your company is profitable, measure how much more money you're getting because of how much more you're delivering. Measure things that you measure normally for the success of the business, and that can help you measure whether or not your collaboration is working. But when it comes to teamwork and camaraderie and things like that, I always advise people to get back to simplicity. Measure how happy people are, and that's super easy to do. Simply ask people to anonymously fill in one questionnaire that says, how happy are you? And give them, several different options. I'm angry, frustrated, or I'm super happy, or I'm mad, somewhere in the beginning, and visualize that and then see the trend. Visualize it in a place where everybody can see it and keep looking at the trend, or create games for them to be more happy and things like that. But things to measure is, again, things that you measure for the quality of your product. That can be number of bugs or number of fixed defects or, the quality of the releases. Things that you measure for your business, that is new business, more money, better customers, and things that you measure for the health of the culture and the happiness of the people. So those are the 3 categories, and there are many different factors you can measure there.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the short version, and people can obviously pursue finding more or, of course, work with you. What about remote team bonding? Sometimes I hear like, oh, remote work is terrible because people don't feel connected to each other. They don't bond. I know that's probably also the 4-hour answer, but do you have the 3-minute answer for a couple of ideas?
Answer.
Okay, great. Couple of ideas on remote team bonding.
Remote team bonding. Right now, when you guys are forced to be isolated, You probably are responsible people and you're not going to travel internally in the city or externally to go visit your friends and family, right? What do you do instead? You use your phone, video conferencing, different ways of connecting with people, sending each other emojis, and all that kind of thing. When you're working remotely, do the exact same thing and make sure that you have social time with people, whether it's in chat or whether it's scheduled time to have lunch together or coffee together or breakfast together. Just in remote teams, it's important to remember that water cooler conversations do not happen on their own. You need to deliberately create them.
So there could be a Slack channel for, I've seen people do Slack channel for pets, Slack channel for stuff I want to rant about, Slack channel for different aspects of things that are really work culture and not directly related to the work.
Yeah, those are very great ideas, and they work for some teams and some cultures, and they don't work for the other. So I say find the one that works for you and just go with it. If your team is used to sharing Friday coffee, do the Friday coffee virtually. You know, I've been drinking lots of tea, just talking to you guys. Have your tea, coffee, and anything, and just chat. One of the things I do with my best friend who lives in Ireland is actually this every Sunday almost. Well, I haven't seen her for about a month now, but normally we have breakfast together on Sundays. We just sit in front of our computers and we talk and chat just like we were across the table from each other. And yes, I have done it in cafes too. And yes, people have looked at me like I'm this crazy woman talking to my computer.
We're all going to get
But
a
I
lot
don't
less
care.
crazy now. Yeah. I mean, if this is going to become the way and hopefully the norm, then we're not going to be the weirdo talking into the air or wearing the headset in the coffee shop or something like that.
Yeah. I just have I have a schedule of this weekly family gatherings for my old family, that is my sisters and my parents. We live in 4 different countries. So we just have a schedule this little, evening for about half an hour to an hour. We all log in and we just chat, and it's as if we are going to a party at my parents' place. And this is great. It's working perfectly. So I do recommend it in family settings and in team settings. If it works for your family and if it works for younger kids, it's going to work for your colleagues too.
Great, great. Thank you. It looks like we don't have any other questions right now. So I think we can start wrapping up because we're near the hour mark and I don't want to keep you into the Friday night. Thank you so much for giving me some of your late Friday afternoon into Friday night. Normally, I'd be afraid you might be going out to dinner and I'm messing up your night, but I think we're all staying home. Uh,
Yeah.
Wherever we are. Got a couple of minutes left. Any last things you want to share with people? And also, please tell people a little bit more about the courses and consulting that you offer now and some of the new stuff you have coming next so that they know that you are the person to connect with.
I want to leave you with one thing that is a quote from one of the people that I have looked up to for many years. The quote is: "Work is what we do, not a place we go to. Remember that, and everything will solve itself." This code is from Joachim Apollo, yeah, the creator
Oh,
of
I know him.
Management 3.0. Yeah, I like that. Like I worked with this company as well. That is what I want to leave you with, and to tell you a summary of what I'm up to and what I'm doing. So right now, as I told you, I get a lot of requests to do workshops and trainings for companies that are finding themselves in this situation where they have no clue where to start and how to work remotely. And many of them are in the middle of their agile transformation. So I do offer trainings in different parts of the agile practices and processes. It's sometimes leadership training and sometimes working with the teams or teaching their agile coaches and scrum masters and product owners how things could be taken remote and how to do that. Online facilitation, which is one of the topics that I really, really love. That's another topic that I teach. I have a 10-week programming coming up in about 2 weeks, and that is called Online Agile Coaching and Facilitation, where we're going to have a group of people. So far, about 120 people have signed up. So we're going to have all these people. Maybe some of you are going to sign up too. Many of the people who have signed up have been to the Remote Forever Summit. So together we're going to go through learning all of the skills to help other people to have productive work and productive meetings and productive conferences and sessions in their work, in their agile work.
Great. And everyone can find you at remoteforever.com. I'm also going to spell your name because this goes out as a podcast without the video, so people can't see it. So if you are listening and you want to find Molood, especially on LinkedIn or just Google stalk her, her name is spelled M like Mary, Olood like Delta. And then her last name, I pronounce it as Ceccarelli. How do you say it?
That is correct.
Okay, good. That is C like Charles, E, two more C's like Charles, Arelli. So
That is
everybody,
difficult.
no, let's not get started with Italian or Italian descended names, as we are both connected to such people. So,
Oh, yes.
so right. Thank you so much for being here. This was fantastic, highly informative. People in the chat are thanking you. And just a reminder also that in addition to the stuff that Molood offers, I do have my absolutely delicious 1-day Dev and UX workshop, which I bet would bookmark fantastically with it, since I'm focusing on what is UX and who the heck are these people and what do they do, and how can they be lean, not the lean UX book, which is garbage. How can they be agile? How can they how can we collaborate better with them? And so that's available. Go to the Delta CX website, go to training, and go to Dev and UX. And I'm working right now, Deb's official fancy studio headphones, on
Nice.
editing a thank you, darling, on editing a video version of it. So within the next week, it should be available as an online course for people who, again, thanks to virus, won't be able to bring me in and don't want the live version. But I can certainly do the remote training. So think of both of us. Quick programming note, as I always tell you guys what's coming next. Please join us next week as we have 3 live streams planned. Monday is going to be a podcast with Sherry on accessibility. Super excited about that. So mark that 6 p.m. Italy time. Check Google on what time that is for you. Tuesday is live office hours, as always, 6:15 p.m. Italy time. Come and ask any questions you have about UX, CX, careers, disasters, etc. And on Wednesday, the 18th, 7 p.m. Italy time, we will be doing UX job speed dating with juniors and entry level people who have never worked in UX before. So come meet some fresh people who are looking to get their first job. That is it for us. Molood, thank you again. And everybody, subscribe to deltacx.tv. Follow this woman everywhere. I mean, every time she posts on LinkedIn, it is absolute gold. It's either genius or funny or both. So keep
I've
following her.
been told today to watch my tone, so I hope I don't offend anybody.
Let's just say your tone works for me and my tone doesn't work for everybody either. I'm never going to be what everybody wants me to be, and that's okay.
Yeah, please do follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter. I'm Remote Forever on Instagram and Twitter, and I usually post as myself, Molood Ceccarelli on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for staying until the end and for
Yes.
showing up. And thanks, Debbie, for having me here.
Yeah, we've got 10 people in YouTube, and it looks like the LinkedIn people logged off, but we had a great turnout today live, and then this will be archived on YouTube for people to find later. So thanks again, and I'm going to stop the live stream. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
good weekend.
Bye.